There is a shortage of software engineers. I saw this headline everywhere when I was searching for my first software engineering job, and it really twisted my expectations on how difficult the process would be. I know the job search is an emotionally draining process, and I have been there. I've battled self-doubt, anxiety, expectations, and over 600 job rejections. My name is KC. I've been a software engineer for about 6 years, and my goal is to help people feel less alone in their career and their life. And today I wanted to talk about this phrase, about the shortage of software engineers. I wanted to talk about the difficulties of getting a job and some actionable tips to help your mindset and help you stay motivated during the process. So let's start by first debunking the myth of the software engineering job shortage. The first thing that I found pretty surprising to hear is that it really wasn't a myth. There truly is a shortage of software engineers. But when companies are talking about this, they are talking about a shortage of experienced software engineers. The tech industry is still projected to grow over the next 10 years. You can see here on the Stack Overflow 2023 developer survey that the overwhelming majority of professional developers are between the ages of 25 and 34. Okay, but why was it so hard for me and everyone else to get their first job if that is the case? Two reasons: supply and demand. You can also see on the same survey that the overwhelming majority of people learning how to code are between the ages of 18 and 24, meaning that there's just a massive supply of people looking for their first software job. Taking a look at the Hired.com 2023 survey, you can see that the demand for people with 0 to 4 years of experience is overwhelmingly low, with it actually dropping to 8% of the total demand in January of 2023. And those two reasons, a lot of people fighting for not a lot of jobs, is the crux of why it is so hard to get your first software job. And you couple this with the fact that we have social media posts on Reddit, LinkedIn, Blind about people who take 3 months out of bootcamp and are able to get like 300K total compensations or something ridiculous like that. It's really no wonder that people are so discouraged lately. And so let's discuss challenges people are having searching for their first job and what they can do about it. Number one, difficulties in even getting an interview in the first place. Obviously, this is the biggest struggle. This is what I struggled with the hardest. I would send out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications. I would get nothing. I would get ghosted. I would get some sort of long side project that would take a weekend to complete. Everything about it was annoying and unsatisfying and just ridiculous. But from what I found from my research and from my friends and all the people that I talked to, sending out tons and tons of applications, 800 to 1,000, is pretty much in the normal range. It truly is a numbers game for applying to these companies, especially when these companies are getting thousands upon thousands of applications per job opening. Number two, difficulties passing software engineering interviews. And so this is what everyone is talking about. Every YouTube channel, every tech blog, every course that people are trying to sell, it is about how to pass the software engineering interviews. And there is no doubt it is hard, and it has become harder than ever, especially for junior developers. And passing interviews honestly are just a matter of time, effort, and experience. And that won't happen overnight. When I was trying to get that first job, I was pretty overwhelmed because I was trying to study for software engineering interviews. I was trying to work on my side projects. I was trying to apply to as many jobs as possible. It's okay to start slow and to feel overwhelmed and to feel like everything is ridiculously difficult and unachievable. I think what helped for me during that time was to focus on one thing at a time and slowly build up from there. So I think I would start with one leak code question. And then the next day I would do maybe 1.5 or 2. And then I would apply to more jobs at the same time. It is definitely a game for the long term. Number three, difficulties with behavioral interviews. So this was something that I was always underprepared for. These are basically interviews where no one's asking you to code or write anything technical on a whiteboard or anything, but instead they ask you, so tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. And when I first started interviewing, I had basically assumed that behavioral interviews were just to make sure you're not a crazy person. And while that still is kind of true for some companies, it actually matters a lot more than you might think. My experience interviewing at Amazon actually helped me with this process for all my interviews to come. Basically, if you don't know, Amazon has these behavioral screens that count for like 50% of your actual score. Basically, they'll ask a whole bunch of very specific behavioral questions. They'll drill down on it. They'll ask follow-up questions. So while I was prepping for that interview, I basically took every single one of their leadership principles and I wrote 2 stories for each one. I think in total I wrote like 24, 25 stories. I still use these same stories in pretty much every interview I have now, whenever I'm asked something that's not technical related. And that will probably help you too. At least it'll give you a slight edge in these kinds of interviews. Number 4, difficulties in getting discouraged by other people's success. And when I was searching for my first job, even though I loved all my friends and my classmates and all these acquaintances who were getting new jobs, I couldn't help but see their posts about their success and be like, what am I doing wrong? It's easy to feel that way, but I would recommend to not let it discourage you. People succeed at all different paces. And I think when you're searching for your first job, you should really refrain from looking at these success story type posts because they'll only kind of set you back in your journey. Number 5, the feeling of rejection and the depressive spiral. So the depressive spiral is a term I made up for myself, but it would go like this. I would spend days, weeks making good progress. I would be studying leak code, I would be applying to jobs, I would be getting calls back from companies, and then suddenly something would set me back. I would get ghosted by a company, I would bomb a phone screen, get flaked on by an interviewer. But the idea was that when these things would happen, they would break my mindset and make it difficult to continue doing the things I was doing well. This spiral really sucks, but as long as you are laser focused on the end goals, you'll always have these ups and downs in your journey along the way. You still just, again, need to keep at it every single day. And with that, I wanted to give some tips for keeping a positive mindset while searching for a job and for maintaining your mental health during that search. So tip number 1 is to focus on habits every single day. If you don't have habits, it can really make you feel like you're going in circles and not going anywhere in your searching process. In a lot of ways, it's like going to the gym. If you go one day and you're 0.01 times stronger, you're not gonna feel it the next day. But if you go to the gym for 6 months, you'll probably be way stronger than when you came. The way I learned to focus incrementally was during actually my job search in 2019, where whenever I would do leak code questions, I would make sure I recorded every single question I did, how difficult I thought it was when I completed it, and repeat them on a regular basis. And this really helped to give me a visual representation of the progress I was making. And the second tip is to incorporate daily rituals into your studying process. So the worst days while studying for my first job are the days when I would get up at like 11 a.m. randomly and then lock myself in my room with coffee and then study leak code until I felt like I was gonna puke. So the idea here is to make sure you have a routine. I didn't feel good about my routine until I made sure to get up at a consistent time, go to the gym, go to a coffee shop, and really just treat this whole process like it was kind of like a 9-to-5 job. Tip number 3 is to do physical activity every day. So I remember it was about the end of college when I actually started incorporating strength training and going to the gym and stuff. It wasn't necessarily to make job searching easier specifically, but it was more about stress management. Like, whenever I would feel stressed, whenever I would feel hopeless, going to the gym in the morning gave me a little bit of time to escape, de-stress, and I almost always felt better when I came back. Tip 4 is to use Pomodoro techniques. So this was a pretty simple strategy I used. But before, when I would study, I would sit down, look at the 10 leak code questions I needed to do, and then just start procrastinating because I didn't want to get started on such a massive task. But instead, what was easier was to tell myself I was gonna do 25 minutes of work followed by a 5-minute break and then repeat that process over and over and over again. First of all, it would just lower the barrier of entry for starting my tasks. And second of all, these blocks of time for studying, they actually became much more manageable, and it was almost like a challenge in a sense to see how many cycles I could complete in a day, rather than just how many leak code questions I could do. Tip 5 is to take daily walks. So I remember when I was a kid, my parents or my teachers or all these people would talk about taking daily walks, and I just thought it was something that old people did. Okay, maybe there's still a shred of truth to it, or maybe it says something about me now, but I found that just taking daily walks and getting some sun on your back actually really improves your mental health. But I can't even explain why. I would just always feel better. And it really helped me to regulate my mood and my mental health during these up and down swings of studying. Tip 6 is to make sure you're taking breaks at the end of the day. So just because you're studying for a job and you don't have one currently doesn't mean you're under house arrest. I think some days I would take the idea that because I didn't have a job, I had to punish myself and study like 16 hours a day until I could get something done. I think while we all focus on the technical things during the first job search, like coding, portfolio projects, etc., your mindset and your mental health are so important while looking for that first job. And if your mind isn't working, if your mind isn't healthy, It makes literally every part of your job search more unbearable and less effective. You're going to perform worse at interviews. You're going to be depressed all the time. You're not going to be able to absorb as much information into your brain. And even like the emails you send out to recruiters are going to start sounding desperate, which is not what companies want. If you're stuck in the job search journey and you want to hear like a relatable journey, I would recommend you check out my own journey about my first job search. Thanks for watching.